told y'all that Jax was the ringleader. I told y'all. He sat in this interview and he was telling stories about shit that he wasn't even there to witness. So let's break down some of the stuff that I heard in this interview. Let's start with Warren's first phone call, because y'all will remember that Warren said that he was over at Ava's house for that 4th of July party when they all started realizing that Nolan was missing, and he called Miss Christine at 11 o'clock.
One of the first things I told Miss Christine Wells in the first phone call that ever occurred with anything to do with Nolan Wells being gone, because I was the first person to call Miss Christine about anything. First phone call, anything to do with Nolan Wells, was me making a phone call to Christine Wells. And one of the first things I said to her, with multiple witnesses here, pull up the phone call if you want. She said, oh, well, Nolan's location is with y'all at, where the house we were at. And I was like, well, no, he left his phone with us. I told her this.
And yesterday, the same time that this interview came out, Christine Wells said this.
360 says that he's on land, and he was like, well, no, I mean, we have his phone.
So both versions of the story say that Warren didn't tell her about the phone until after she confronted him with the 360. Now, Warren tells Miss Christine that he knows somebody in the Coast Guard and that he's going to call them, which is very fucking different than calling the Coast Guard, which absolutely explains why the Coast Guard came out and said at first that they had not received a call from the kids that night. The Coast Guard's initial statement said they weren't informed until 12:30. Then the Coast Guard later changed their story and said, oh wait, actually we did. And it seems to me that that first call was most likely an off-the-record to a friend kind of deal, which means these people freaked out and didn't call the Coast Guard until after all these people showed up at Jax's house. Which would explain why in the course of this interview it went from Warren called the Coast Guard to we did. Now, when the subject turns to how the family got the phone back from these boys, you'll notice that there was a couple slip-ups.
Warren, you weren't at the house, and so you weren't there when they came to get the phone and all that. So
now remember, Warren just said that he wasn't at the house when the phone was got. And then Morgan talks about getting a phone call from one of the people in Christine Wells' group.
And how did they get the phone back?
So I got a call from a kid we went to high school with. He called me just asking me questions. He saw people posting on Snapchat, like the picture that was circulating.
Except this picture wasn't posted until July 5th. So how could this picture have been circulating on Snapchat that night? But let's continue.
And he called and he was asking questions. He was like, where's Nolan? When's the last time y'all seen him? And then he was like, so where are y'all at? And I told him, I said, we're at Jax's house. And then Warren got on the phone, and I don't know.
So they come to my house, right? And they kind of
hold on, before we get there. Was it confrontational or was it just trying to find? It was confrontational.
Yeah,
already?
Wouldn't y'all agree? Yeah, he was 110%. He was very confrontational.
And when did was this on the night of the 4th or the next day?
This was the night when this was before they came and got the phone.
So this is the night of the 4th, yes.
You guys are missing a part of the story. How did you get from Ava's house to Jax's house? Because Miss Christine is watching you guys on the Life 360. So suddenly she's seeing the phone leave one location and go to another. Of course I would be upset. And now all of a sudden Warren is there when the phone stuff starts happening? He's listening to the phone call? Now I need y'all to remember that Warren also said that the phone was in his truck on the first conversation, as we have from this report. Meaning if we were to believe Warren that he was not there when everybody showed up looking for the phone at some time in between 11 and 1 a.m., so then that would mean after they heard this angry phone call, Warren gets the phone out of his vehicle and puts it in Jax's house and then leaves.
There's probably like 10, 15 people in my house I don't even know. And they're all up in our faces, going crazy, asking where Nolan is, and we don't know. And finally they get into Wyatt's face, and they're like, where's your boat? Where's the boat at?
Demanding his address.
Demanding his address and stuff like that. And he finally ends up giving it to them. We give them the phone. They have the phone at this point. Then they get the address to his house. Then they go to his house. And they're searching all over his boat, what I heard and stuff like that. Well, anyways, I don't really know much about that. But they come back to my house at around 1 o'clock in the morning. We called law enforcement. I was with Wyatt at the time. After we left Jackson's house that night, I was with Wyatt, and one of the one person we were with saw that their location was actually headed towards Wyatt's house. And so Wyatt got on the phone with 911 and was like, hey, these people are on the way to my house or already at my house. My mom and my dad are there alone and they know nothing about this. But Wyatt's mom actually, when they were looking at the boat, they were actually walking from the boat, and she came out and started talking to them.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Wyatt, Morgan, and Jax were all together. Warren was gone for some reason at this point. 10 to 15 people just barge into your house. Don't know why your grandparents weren't around. That might explain some things, huh? Guess y'all had the house all to your fucking self that weekend. But then they ask Wyatt for his address so that they can go look at the boat. Wyatt gives them the address. They start heading over there. Wyatt and Morgan get into a car and leave Jax's house. Somebody else that you were with that we aren't hearing about is tracking someone else's phone. I don't know if it was somebody who was with the group that they had access to, or if they were tracking Nolan's phone and they saw it was heading to Wyatt's house. And even though Wyatt gave them the address, and instead of calling his parents, he calls 911 and tells them, my parents don't know anything about that's going on. Can you send police over there? Now, mind you, it was about half an hour after being on the phone with Warren that Christine was able to actually call and report him missing. But she was having to go back and forth and go down to all these different agencies because nobody would fucking help her. And frankly, I want to know why all of this confrontation was left out of the fucking report. Like, if this family had to be removed from 2 different properties by the police, why is there no record of that? And in fact, it wasn't until after these confrontations that MDMR and Ocean Springs Police apparently had their little conversations about who was going to be taking over the case. Because remember, the Jackson County Sheriff Lieutenant told them that deputies had spoken with several friends that had traveled to the island on the vessel with Nolan, and that when they were left, he was in the company of an unknown female. So now, even though Warren had supposedly called the Coast Guard, all these family members are telling the police that the kid is missing. These are the people that last saw them. They're all like, we last saw him on the island. Still, the deputies said that they did not have reason to believe that there was any water-related exigencies or emergencies. Don't worry, y'all. I've got a lot fucking more to say about this stuff because Warren fucked up pretty badly in this interview, and I'll show you why.
August 5th. While the friends were doing interviews and the phone sat unexamined, something else was happening. Something that had nothing to do with Horn Island, nothing to do with a boat, nothing to do with an investigation. It had everything to do with shutting a mother up. Ben Crump issued a statement that day, and what it revealed should have been front-page news. Christine Wansley, nurse practitioner, had been notified that the Mississippi Board of Nursing had opened a professional misconduct investigation against her, based on a complaint, filed by an anonymous person. Anonymous. Here is what you need to know about Christine Wansley's career before that complaint. Not one prior complaint, not a single one, in her entire career as a healthcare professional in Mississippi. So let's run the timeline exactly as it happened. Her son dies, July 4th. She buries him. She starts asking questions publicly. She hires attorneys. She goes on Good Morning America. She does press conferences. And then, someone files an anonymous complaint against her nursing license. Nothing changed about her practice. Not one thing. The only thing that changed is that she started asking what happened to her son. And it didn't stop there. Supporters reported that Christine's professional profile was being hit with 1-star reviews from people who had never been her patients. And before she even buried Nolan, hate mail arrived. Now here is what the Mississippi Board of Nursing decided. The complaint was closed, dismissed, frivolous, unfounded. The board said it was never about patient care. Crump said it plainly, this is a warning shot at a grieving mother, meant to pressure and scare her into staying quiet. Closed. Just like that. Because there was nothing there. But here's what doesn't go away just because a complaint gets dismissed. You don't file a nothing complaint against a grieving mother, by accident. Someone made a decision to pick up a phone, or open a laptop, and submit that complaint while this woman was planning her son's funeral. That decision tells you something. And what it tells you is that the questions Christine was asking were landing somewhere they weren't supposed to land. Now watch this. Because while Christine was dealing with anonymous complaints and review bombing, someone else was getting full on-camera access to the friends. Brandon Tatum, known publicly as Officer Tatum, conservative commentator, former Tucson police officer, YouTube personality with a large platform. He traveled to Mississippi, positioned himself as a fact finder, someone cutting through the noise and getting the real story directly from the people who were there. TMZ reported that Tatum sat down with Warren Hudson, Jax Patillo, and Morgan Seymour, alongside their attorney Tyler Cox, on camera. The three friends said they wish they had never gone on that trip. They said they believed Nolan would still be alive if they had stayed home. Tatum also featured a young man named Treston Shepard. Treston described himself as one of Nolan's best friends. He showed Tatum prom photos of the two of them together. He said he gave Nolan rides to school on multiple occasions. He was emotional on camera. Tatum noted, "He literally cried and teared up off camera." That's what Tatum observed. And I'm not dismissing that. But here's the friction. News Nation sat down with Nolan's stepfather, Elmore Wansley. They asked him about Treston Shepard. Elmore said he didn't recognize him. His exact words, "Just because you park your vehicle in someone's yard doesn't mean that they have to know you." Let that land. The stepfather of the deceased, being asked about a young man who is all over national television claiming to be Nolan's best friend, says, "I don't know who that is." Now, either Treston is telling the truth and Elmore simply never met him. That's possible. 18-year-olds have friendships their parents don't always see. Or the family is right, and the closeness being described on camera has been significantly overstated. And the reason that matters is because Treston's account is part of the counter-narrative. The one that says everything was fine, nobody did anything wrong, and race had nothing to do with it. Tatum made 2 separate trips to Mississippi to interview the friends. 2 trips. A commentator, no official role, no badge, no subpoena power. Meanwhile, the family's phone still hasn't been jointly examined. A commentator with no official role got more access to the friends than any forensic examiner has gotten to that phone. Ask yourself why. Okay, stay with me. Because this next piece got enormous public attention, and it deserves very careful handling. July 4th, approximately 4 p.m., one of Nolan's friends placed a call to Seatow, a private marine towing company. The reason for the call: the group's boat was taking on water near the west tip of Horn Island. In the original recording, the caller says, "Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking." That call became evidence. And then TMZ got hold of it. TMZ enhanced the audio and claimed that in the background of that call, you can hear voices saying, "Is he dead? Check his chest. Wake up." That interpretation spread across the internet fast. But then a forensic expert stepped in. Digital forensics expert Robert Freed said he could not corroborate TMZ's claims after directly comparing the enhanced version to the original recording. Here is what Freed found. The TMZ version of the recording is 20 seconds longer than the original, and it carries a different digital fingerprint. 20 seconds longer, different digital fingerprint. That is not a minor discrepancy. In forensic audio analysis, that is a red flag that has to be explained before any interpretation of that audio can be accepted. So we have 2 possibilities. Either TMZ's enhancement captured background voices that were always there, just inaudible in the original, or the enhanced version has been altered in ways that introduce sounds that don't exist in the original recording. Right now, no official source has verified either interpretation. But here is what I want you to focus on. The original unenhanced call still raises questions completely on its own. The dispatcher asked basic questions. How high is the water? How many people are on the boat? The caller struggled to give clear answers during what should be a straightforward emergency call. And in the middle of that call, you can clearly hear the caller yell at someone on that boat, "Shut the hell up." Who was he telling to be quiet? And why, in the middle of a sinking emergency, was that the priority? The family's legal team has forensic audio specialists reviewing the complete Seatow call. The enhanced version may be contested, the original is not, and the original has a question sitting inside it that nobody has answered. Now let's talk about where Nolan's body was found. Because this is the detail that the mainstream coverage keeps treating as a footnote. Nolan was last seen at the west tip of Horn Island. His body was recovered at the northwestern tip, essentially the same location. 2 full days passed between July 4th and July 6th. The Gulf of Mexico has active currents. It has tidal patterns that shift every 6 hours. Bodies that enter the water do not typically remain in the same general area for 48 hours, not with the tidal changes that occur between one day and the next. Ben Crump put it directly, "We want to know, how is that possible with the oceanic tides?" Ocean engineering experts have been brought in specifically to analyze the tidal patterns around Horn Island on those dates. And that analysis points to 2 possibilities. He didn't enter the water where they say he did, or he didn't enter the water when they say he did. One of those 2 things has to be true, if the body didn't move the way physics says it should have. And this connects directly to a 22-page independent analytical review, completed using photographs, videos, GPS coordinates, and witness accounts. The review's conclusion, a material gap exists in the timeline between Nolan's last independently corroborated sighting and the reported departure of the boat, 22 pages, no conclusion on criminal or civil responsibility, just documented questions, and a hole in the story that has not been closed. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer weighed in publicly. She said, "When you add it all together, what we see publicly seems to be an accident." But she added, "I doubt we know the truth yet." Even the person saying it looks accidental is saying the full picture hasn't come into view. A material gap is not a theory. It is a documented absence of evidence, where evidence should exist. Right here, pause for a second. Everything we've just walked through, Christine's nursing license, the CTO call, the body location, the 22-page report, none of that is speculation. Every single point is sourced, documented, and dated, and the grand jury hasn't even convened yet. If you want to be the person who actually understands this case when that announcement drops, subscribe to Detective Crime Hour right now. We don't do surface level. We pull the documents, we check the dates, we follow the evidence. And when the grand jury moves, we'll be the first place to break down exactly what it means. Hit subscribe. Then let's finish this. Here is where the legal picture currently stands. And I want to be precise, because the framing of this matters enormously. This case is headed to a Mississippi grand jury. The district attorney, Angel Myers McElrath, has been clear about one thing. Every unexplained death in the county, except natural causes and non-criminal car accidents, goes before a grand jury. That is standard procedure. Going to a grand jury does not automatically mean someone is being charged, but family attorney Eric Hertz told NPR he believes the case could go before a grand jury in under 30 days. He did not name who the subject of that review might be, but here is what the Friends have already done. They have hired multiple high-profile attorneys, not one, multiple, for wrongful death defenses, and to potentially file defamation suits. That level of legal preparation does not match the story of a simple accident where their friend chose to stay behind. It matches people who expect this to escalate. And at the federal level, the Congressional Black Caucus wrote directly to the U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Kash Patel, calling for a federal review of this case. The chair of the caucus, Representative Yvette Clarke of New York, wrote that the scant information from local investigators has members of the caucus concerned. That letter does not get written for every accidental drowning in Mississippi. That happens when elected officials look at a case and see enough institutional red flags to demand outside eyes. And then there's this. 3 people have been arrested in 3 separate states for threats connected to this case. Illinois, Ohio, California, federal arrests, bomb threats to county offices, death threats to police officers. Cases that are truly accidental do not generate federal arrests, congressional letters, and multi-state bomb threats. That level of response tells you what the public is seeing, even before a grand jury sees anything. Now let me tell you exactly what this family is asking for, because it keeps getting lost in the noise. They want the phone examined, with both sides present. They want the state autopsy results released. They want the grand jury to see everything, not just the version that gets handed to them through official channels. Crump said it directly. A thorough investigation must be completed, nothing held back, nothing overlooked. As of the most recent reporting, nobody has forensically examined that phone. Not the family's team, not law enforcement, nobody. The independent pathologist, Dr. Roger Mitchell, still has not been given access to the materials retained from the state's first autopsy. The state autopsy itself is sealed. The grand jury has no confirmed date. 6 weeks, 1 phone, 0 forensic downloads. That is the single most important fact in this entire case. So let's bring this back to where it started. Nolan Xavier Wells, football player, 18 years old, July 4th, 2024, went to Horn Island with friends, never came home. His stepfather, Elmore Wansley, said something that doesn't need any addition. We always taught him, if you go with a group, you stay with the group. If you go with 5, you come back with 5. He always said, yes, sir. If the friend's story is true, if Nolan really did choose to stay behind, then a young man made an impulsive decision on a hot July afternoon and paid for it with his life. That is a tragedy, a real, devastating, preventable tragedy. But if the friend's story is not true, then what happened on that island is something else entirely. And the evidence, the phone, the Snapchat data, the GPS timestamps, the title analysis, the material gap in the timeline, all of it needs to be examined. All of it needs to see the light of day. And Christine Wansley, the woman who has been fighting for exactly that, is still standing, still demanding oversight, still asking for a transparent process. After an anonymous complaint targeted her nursing license, after review bombing hit her professional profile, after hate mail arrived before she buried her child, after a 48-hour deadline she couldn't physically meet, after being labeled uncooperative by a narrative that ignored the documented facts, still standing. That tells you everything you need to know about who Christine Wansley is. And it tells you everything you need to know about how much the answers to her questions matter. The grand jury is coming. And when it does, every contradiction, every receipt, every gap in this timeline is going to matter. Subscribe to Detective Crime Hour right now, because when that announcement drops, this is the only place that will have already connected every single dot for Nolan.